Today we're taking an epic journey through the complete story of ancient Egypt, from nomadic tribes along the Nile to the last pharaoh who seduced Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. We're covering 3,000 years of history in 10 minutes, and trust me, it's going to be a wild ride. By the end of this video, you'll understand how a desert civilization became the greatest empire of the ancient world, and why it eventually crumbled to dust. Let's dive into the sands of time. Everything starts with the Nile River. Without it, Egypt would just be empty desert. But this wasn't just any river. It was a miracle of nature that flooded predictably every year, depositing rich, fertile soil across the land. Around 3500 BCE, scattered tribes along the Nile began to notice something incredible. While other civilizations struggled with unpredictable floods and droughts, the Nile was like clockwork. You could plan your entire year around it. This predictability created something revolutionary: agricultural surplus. When you can grow more food than you need to survive, some people can stop farming and become specialists: priests, craftsmen, soldiers, and administrators. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus called Egypt the gift of the Nile, and he was absolutely right. The river wasn't just Egypt's lifeline, it was the foundation of the first great civilization in human history. But here's the genius part. The Egyptians didn't just use the Nile, they mastered it. They built irrigation systems, canals, and dams that turned the desert into a garden. They learned to predict the floods so accurately that they created the first 365-day calendar. This mastery over nature gave them something no other civilization had: the confidence to think big. Really big. Around 3100 BCE, a legendary king named Menes, also called Narmer, did something that changed history forever. He united Upper and Lower Egypt into one kingdom. This wasn't just political unity, it was the birth of the pharaoh concept. But pharaohs weren't just kings, they were living gods. The Egyptians believed their pharaoh was the earthly embodiment of Horus, the falcon god. When he died, he became Osiris, god of the underworld. This wasn't just religion, it was the ultimate political system. Think about it. If your king is literally a god, you don't question his authority. You don't rebel. You don't even think about it. This divine monarchy gave Egypt incredible stability for centuries. The early dynastic period, 3100 to 2686 BCE, established the foundations of Egyptian civilization: hieroglyphic writing, monumental architecture, and the administrative system that would govern Egypt for millennia. But the real magic happened during the Old Kingdom, 2686–2181 BCE. This is when Egypt went from impressive to absolutely mind-blowing. The Old Kingdom pharaohs had so much power and so many resources that they could afford to build monuments that still boggle the mind today. We're talking about the pyramids, not just tombs, but statements of divine power carved in stone. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu around 2580 BCE, was the tallest building in the world for over 3,800 years. Let that sink in. Medieval cathedrals, Renaissance churches, nothing came close until the 19th century. The Middle Kingdom, 2055 to 1650 BCE, was Egypt's first golden age. After a period of civil war and chaos, strong pharaohs reunited the country and ushered in an era of unprecedented prosperity. This is when Egypt became a true empire. They conquered Nubia to the south, gaining access to gold mines that made Egypt the richest nation in the ancient world. Egyptian merchants traded with civilizations across the Mediterranean and Africa. But the real golden age was the New Kingdom, 1550 to 1077 BCE. This is when Egypt became a superpower that dominated the ancient world for over 400 years. Meet some of the most famous pharaohs in history. Hatshepsut, 1479 to 1458 BCE, one of the most successful pharaohs ever, and she was a woman. She ruled for 22 years, built magnificent temples, and established trade networks that brought exotic goods from across Africa and Asia. Akhenaten, 1353 to 1336 BCE, the heretic pharaoh who tried to revolutionize Egyptian religion by worshipping only one god, Aten. He moved the capital to a new city and created a completely new artistic style. His religious revolution failed, but his changes influenced art and culture for generations. Tutankhamun, 1332 to 1323 BCE. King Tut became famous not for what he did alive, but for what he left behind. His intact tomb, discovered in 1922, revealed the incredible wealth and artistry of New Kingdom Egypt. Ramesses II, 1279 to 1213 BCE. Ramesses the Great ruled for 66 years and built more monuments than any other pharaoh. He's probably the pharaoh mentioned in the Bible's Exodus story. His military campaigns and building projects made Egypt the dominant power in the ancient world. During the New Kingdom, Egypt controlled territory from Sudan to Syria. Egyptian armies were feared across the ancient world. Egyptian culture influenced civilizations from Greece to Ethiopia. 4. The warrior pharaohs. The New Kingdom wasn't just about building temples, it was about building an empire through military conquest. Egyptian pharaohs became warrior kings who expanded their borders through superior technology and tactics. The Egyptians revolutionized warfare. They were among the first to use horse-drawn chariots, composite bows, and bronze weapons. Their army was professional, well-trained, and equipped with the best technology of the ancient world. The Battle of Kadesh, 1274 BCE, was one of the largest chariot battles in history. Ramesses II led 20,000 Egyptian soldiers against the Hittite Empire. The battle was so epic that both sides claimed victory and created the world's first known peace treaty. Egyptian military might wasn't just about conquest, it was about projection of power. When pharaohs built monuments covered in hieroglyphs describing their victories, they were sending a message to potential enemies. This is what happens when you cross Egypt. But military power requires constant resources. Maintaining an empire, funding a professional army, and building monuments required enormous wealth. Egypt's economy was stretched to its limits. The pharaohs solved this problem through tribute from conquered territories, trade monopolies, and exploitation of natural resources. But this system had a fatal weakness. It required constant military success to maintain. By 1100 BCE, cracks were starting to show in the Egyptian Empire. The Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BCE devastated civilizations across the Mediterranean. Mysterious sea peoples invaded Egypt multiple times, and while the Egyptians repelled them, the wars were costly and exhausting. The Third Intermediate Period, 1077 to 664 BCE, saw Egypt fragment into competing kingdoms. Libyan dynasties ruled the north, Nubian pharaohs controlled the south, and various local rulers carved out their own territories. This wasn't just political chaos, it was cultural decline. The great building projects stopped, trade networks collapsed, the economy stagnated. Egypt was becoming a shadow of its former self. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source: iron weapons. Egypt's military superiority had been built on bronze technology, but by 1000 BCE, iron weapons were becoming common. Egypt's enemies now had access to weapons that were superior to Egyptian bronze. The Assyrians, armed with iron weapons and siege engines, conquered Egypt in 671 BCE. For the first time in over 2,000 years, Egypt was ruled by foreign conquerors. The Assyrian conquest was brutal. They destroyed temples, looted treasures, and deported Egyptian elites. When the Assyrian Empire collapsed, Egypt briefly regained independence, but it was too late. The damage was done. The late period, 664 to 332 BCE, saw Egypt ruled by a succession of foreign powers. But here's what's remarkable: Egyptian culture survived and even thrived under foreign rule. The Persians conquered Egypt in 525 BCE, but Persian kings adopted the title of pharaoh and respected Egyptian traditions. They rebuilt temples, restored monuments, and maintained the administrative system that had governed Egypt for millennia. But the Persian rule was unpopular. Egyptians saw the Persians as foreign occupiers, not legitimate pharaohs. Several revolts broke out, and while they were eventually crushed, they showed that Egyptian national identity remained strong. Then came Alexander the Great in 332 BCE. His conquest was different. He was welcomed as a liberator who freed Egypt from Persian rule. Alexander showed deep respect for Egyptian culture and was crowned pharaoh according to traditional rituals. When Alexander died in 323 BCE, Egypt was inherited by one of his generals, Ptolemy I. The Ptolemaic dynasty, 323 to 30 BCE, would rule Egypt for almost 300 years, but they were Greek, not Egyptian. The Ptolemies created a fascinating hybrid culture. They were Greek kings who became Egyptian pharaohs. They built Alexandria, which became the intellectual center of the ancient world. The Library of Alexandria contained hundreds of thousands of scrolls, the largest collection of knowledge in the ancient world. But the Ptolemies made a crucial mistake. They remained culturally Greek. They spoke Greek, practiced Greek religion, and married within their own family to maintain pure Greek bloodlines. This created a disconnect between the rulers and the ruled that would eventually prove fatal. Cleopatra VII, 69–30 BCE, was the last pharaoh of Egypt, and she was determined to restore Egyptian greatness. But she faced an impossible challenge. Rome had become the dominant power in the Mediterranean, and Egypt was caught in the middle of Roman civil wars. Cleopatra was brilliant, speaking 9 languages and receiving the finest education available in the ancient world. She was also politically savvy, understanding that Egypt's survival depended on alliance with Rome. Her first alliance was with Julius Caesar. When Caesar arrived in Alexandria in 48 BCE, Cleopatra allegedly had herself smuggled into his presence, rolled up in a carpet. Whether this story is true or not, Caesar became her lover and political ally. After Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE, Cleopatra allied with Mark Antony, one of Rome's most powerful generals. Their relationship was both romantic and political. Together they dreamed of creating a new empire that would unite East and West. But Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus, saw Cleopatra and Antony as threats to Roman power. The final showdown came at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE. The battle was a naval disaster for Cleopatra and Antony. Their fleet was destroyed, and they fled back to Egypt. Octavian followed them, and in 30 BCE, Alexandria fell to Roman forces. Rather than be paraded through Rome as a captive, Cleopatra chose to die on her own terms. According to legend, she allowed herself to be bitten by a poisonous asp, dying as Egypt's political independence ended with Cleopatra's death, but its cultural influence was just beginning. Roman emperors adopted Egyptian symbols of power. Egyptian obelisks were transported to Rome. Egyptian gods were worshipped throughout the Roman Empire. But the real legacy of ancient Egypt goes far beyond politics and religion. The Egyptians invented writing systems that influenced alphabets worldwide, medical knowledge that wouldn't be surpassed for centuries, engineering techniques that we still use today, mathematical concepts including geometry and astronomy, art and architecture that continues to inspire modern designers. The Egyptian concept of the afterlife profoundly influenced Greek philosophy and later Christian theology. Egyptian medical texts were still being copied and studied in medieval Europe. Egyptian astronomical observations helped create our modern calendar. Even today, Egyptian symbolism appears in everything from currency design to pop culture. The pyramid on the US dollar bill, the Washington Monument obelisk, and countless movies and books all draw inspiration from ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt lasted for over 3,000 years, longer than any other civilization in human history. It survived foreign invasions, civil wars, economic collapse, and cultural changes that destroyed other empires. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about ancient Egypt is that it never really ended. Its influence on art, science, religion, and culture continues to shape our world today. Every time you use a 365-day calendar, see a pyramid, or watch a movie about mummies, you're experiencing the legacy of the pharaohs. The Egyptians believed in eternal life, and in a way, they achieved it. Their civilization died, but their ideas, innovations, and inspiration live on forever. What's your favorite aspect of ancient Egyptian civilization? Are you fascinated by the pyramids, intrigued by the pharaohs, or amazed by their scientific achievements? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this journey through 3,000 years of history left you wanting more, hit that subscribe button.